Hans von Spakovsky is a senior counsel at the Heritage Foundation and former counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. Hans, thanks so much for joining me. It's very much appreciated.
Sure, happy to do it.
The verdict from this trial basically vindicated the Sanford police chief who chose not to arrest Zimmerman simply because there wasn't enough evidence to do so. Does that sort of further underscore that this was mostly political?
Oh, I think it does. This was a political prosecution from the very start. And remember, that police chief was fired because he wouldn't arrest George Zimmerman. And what he said was, look, there's no probable cause to do it, but local officials, they wanted an arrest.
Right. Well, and then what we learned as well, and I know this has been published in multiple locations, but what we've learned is that the Department of Justice, there's a department within the Department of Justice that's had apparently an open investigation on George Zimmerman for the better part of a year. And then we also learned that the Department of Justice had also sent people down, their Civil Rights Division, sent people down to Sanford, Florida to help organize and manage protests. What has been the DOJ's behavior in all of this? And it seems really unusual for them to have this investigation open on him.
Well, particularly because, look, we now know that the FBI initially looked at this, and what they were looking for was racial animus. That is a key to charging anyone with a civil rights violation, which is what this division of justice has jurisdiction over. And the FBI reports plainly said there was no racial animus in this. The jury verdict confirms that, because remember, the state prosecutors tried to prove racial animus throughout, and the jury didn't believe him because they didn't have any evidence of it.
Right, yeah, and no evidence at all. I mean, in fact, wasn't there one of the testimonies from the trial was that no, this wasn't racially motivated. There was no animus in this. This is kind of trumped up, and of course that didn't really get a lot of play in the headlines.
No, it didn't. But look, what we have to fear is that the Civil Rights Division, which is the division now looking at whether to continue to pursue Zimmerman, look, it's the most politicized division within the entire Justice Department. I know, I worked there for 4 years. It's not just the Obama political appointees. I mean, they're bad, but so are most of the career lawyers. They all come from organizations like the NAACP. It's the NAACP that's pushing Holder to indict Zimmerman for a criminal civil rights violation. And
they've arranged for meetings with the NAACP, with Sanford Police, and they've been working a lot behind the scenes. How long has this department been around?
The division's been around for more than 40 years.
Wow.
They have long had problems, and they have particularly in the last 5 years, they have really politicized their enforcement of federal voting laws and also other federal discrimination laws. Remember, this is the same division that refused to prosecute the new Black Panther Party for voter intimidation.
Right. So do you think that there's a likelihood that they're going to file charges, the DOJ will file charges against George Zimmerman?
I think the only thing that may stop them is if sane heads prevail and they realize that there is not a case good enough for them to win. I have no doubt that the career people will get pressure from the political head, Tom Perez, and from Eric Holder to pursue this case because they want to make their allies like the NAACP happy.
Now, there have been some who said, well, this would be double jeopardy, but explain this a little bit to me because it's not, because it's a federal statute, it's technically not double jeopardy.
Yeah, double jeopardy, as most people know, prevents you from being charged with murder twice, but that only applies if the state tries to prosecute you twice or the feds try to prosecute you twice. It doesn't, double jeopardy does not apply if the feds go after you after the state has failed to find you guilty on some kind of state action. Because it's a different, you know, the state goes after you for violating state law, the feds are going after you for violating federal law. It's not the same.
Right. And would anything, would this, how much would the verdict from this particular trial have an effect on, you know, say the DOJ does file charges, they go to court, how much of a, what would this verdict do to that trial? Would it be, would that just be a political Victorian freak show as well, for the lack of a better phrase? What sort of influence does this verdict have?
Well, it wouldn't have any influence directly. Now, it would probably be pretty hard to find jurors for a federal case who don't know about what happened in the Zimmerman case, and it certainly might influence them that, a prior court that looked at this found him not guilty.
Right.
The chief thing about the state's case is all of the evidence, we've now seen it, and there simply is not evidence to sustain or prove a civil rights violation.
Now, with this, if the Department of Justice were to go to court on this, does that somehow open up Eric Holder? He's been granted immunity in previous cases. Benghazi, everyone's, new Black Panther Party, the NSA, IRS, the persecution of journalists. Does that open him up somehow for further inquiry if they act in this?
Oh, yeah, no, I think it does. And remember, many of those cases are not over yet. He was held in contempt by the House of Representatives, first Attorney General for that to ever happen to, and that case is being pursued in court by the House of Representatives. We just haven't gotten an answer yet from a judge as to whether he's going to enforce that contempt citation. Wow.
Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on this. Going to be very interesting going forward. Hans, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, take care.